Hello and greetings to everyone. We are going to move to the next thing, which is comparing fractions. Comparing fractions. That means we can be given a set of fractions and we wish to know which of the fractions is the biggest fraction or which of the fractions is the smallest fraction. Take this down to compare two or more fractions is to say which is bigger or which is smaller. That is arranging the fractions in, I'll write this down with a red pen, ascending order. When we talk of ascending order, that means from the smallest to the biggest. Or we can arrange them in descending order. When we talk of descending order, that is from the biggest fraction to the smallest fraction. That's what it means. Comparison of fractions varies depending on the nature of the fractions. That means the nature of the fractions we have to compare. We take by the margin, the first one, A, fractions with a common denominator. That means you can be given fractions that have the same denominator and we have to compare them. Fractions with a common denominator. This is the first one. We're going to see how to compare such fractions. To compare fractions with a common denominator The fractions with the common denominator, the greater fraction is the one with the greater numerator, while the smaller fraction is the one with the smaller numerator. Let's take for example, e.g. given the fractions 3/4 and 1/4, you say these two fractions, they have a common denominator, which is 4. If you look at the numerators are different. Here we have 3, here we have 1. 3 is greater than 1, so the bigger fraction will simply be 3/4, we have 3/4 is greater than 1/4, or we can give it this other way. We can say 1/4 is less than 3/4. So that's how we compare fractions having a common denominator with different numerators. It's like, for example, we have two groups of persons, with each group having 4 members. In the first group, they are given 3 apples to share. In the second group, they are given an apple to share. You will see that in the first group, they will have more apples to eat than in the second group. Now we go to B, fractions with a common numerator. To compare fractions with a common numerator, that means they have the same numerators, the bigger fraction is the one with the smaller denominator, while the smaller fraction is the one is the one with the bigger denominator. Now let's take an example on this, e.g. take for the fractions 7/8 and 7/11. You see that these two fractions, they have the same numerators but different denominators. We have looking at the two fractions 7/8 and 7/11. The two fractions, they have a common numerator, which is 7. Their denominators are different. Here we have 8, here we have 11. We know 11 is greater than 8. In this case, the bigger fraction will simply be the one with the smaller denominator, while the smaller fraction will simply be the one with a bigger denominator. So we have 7/8 is greater than 7/11. Or we can give it this other way. We can say 7/11 is less than 7/8. It's like, for example, we have two groups of persons. The first group has 8 members. The second group has 11 members. And in each of the groups, they are given an equal number of oranges. The first group, they are given 7 oranges. In the second group, they are given 7 oranges for them to share. You will see that in the first group, where we have just 8 members, they will have more oranges to consume than in the second group, where we have 11 members. Therefore, the fraction 7/8 is greater than 7/11, which is the same as saying the fraction 7/11 is less than the fraction 7/8. We go now to C. For C, fractions with different fractions with different numerators and different denominators. Write this down. In this case, we express the given fractions as equivalent fractions with a common denominator, the common denominator is the LCM, lowest common multiple of the denominators of the given fractions. We close the bracket and we can easily compare them. Easily compare the fractions. Let's take this example. This is a special case. We take first one, I by the margin. Compare 3/4 and 4/5. We have to compare these two fractions. We take solution. Okay. First thing, we need to start by finding the LCM of the denominators of the two fractions, 4 and 5. This will simply be equal to, we know the highest common factor of 4 and 5 is simply 1. So for us to get their LCM, we are simply going to take 4 times 5, which is 20. The next thing now, we need to express each of these fractions as equivalent fractions with a denominator 20. For us to do so, we take the first fraction 3/4. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator of this fraction by the denominator of the second fraction, which is 5. We're going to multiply 3 by 5 and 4 by 5. So this will give us 3 times 5 is 15 over 4 times 5 is 20. And for the next fraction, we have 4/5. We need to express it as an equivalent fraction with denominator 20. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator of this fraction by the denominator of the first fraction, which is 4. 4 times 4 over 5 times 4. So this will give us 4 times 4 is 16 over 5 times 4, 20. Now we have two fractions with a common denominator, which is 20. So we can easily compare these two fractions, 15 over 20 and 16 over 20. Comparing 15 over 20 and 16 over 20, we know 15 over 20. Here in this case, 15 is less than 16. So the fraction 15 over 20 is less than 16 over 20. Now we can conclude, therefore, we know 15 over 20 is an equivalent fraction for the fraction 3/4. Therefore, 3/4 is less than 16 over 20 is an equivalent fraction for the fraction 4/5. It's less than 4/5. We are done with I. Now let's take 2i. 2i. We have to compare 2/7 and 1/3. We take solution. First thing, we have to find the LCM of the denominators of the two fractions. The LCM of 7 and 3 simply equal to, we know the highest common factor of 7 and 3 is simply 1, so the LCM will simply be 7 times 3, which is 21. Next, we need to express them as equivalent fractions. 2 over 7. We are going to multiply the numerator and the denominator of this fraction by the denominator of the second fraction, which is 3. 2 times 3 all over 7 times 3. This will give us 2 times 3, 6 all over 7 times 3, 21. And the next fraction, 1/3. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator of this fraction by the denominator of the first fraction, which is 7. 1 times 7 over 3 times 7. So this will give us 1 times 7, 7 all over 3 times 7 gives us 21. Now, comparing 6 over 21 and 7 over 21, we have, their denominators are the same, 21, 21. For the numerators, we know 6 is less than 7. We have 6 over 21 is less than 7 over 21. Now we can conclude, therefore, we know 6 over 21 is an equivalent fraction of the fraction 2 over 7 is less than 7 over 21 is an equivalent fraction for the fraction 1/3. We are done with this. Now we're going to take exercises for application. Exercises for application. Question 1 goes arrange the following fractions in ascending order. Ascending order, that means from the smallest to the biggest. For A, we have 3 over 8, 1, 8, 7 over 8, 5 over 8. For B, we have the fraction 1/3, 1 over 10, 1 over 5, 1 over 6. For C, we have the fraction 3/4, 5 over 8, 2 over 3, 1 over 2. We go now to question 2. It says arrange the following fractions in descending order. We talk of descending order, that means from the biggest to the smallest. For E, we have the fraction 5 over 11, 6 over 11, 2 over 11, 9 over 11. B, we have 9 all over 5, 9 all over 10, 9 all over 2, lastly 9 over 13. For C, we have the fraction 3/5. feet, next 4 feet, next 3/4, and lastly 2/3. Let's answer these exercises. Take solution. For question 1, if we have the fraction 3/8, 1/8, 7/8, 5/8. We are to arrange these fractions in ascending order. That means from the smallest to the biggest. Looking at these fractions here, you see that they all have a common denominator, 8, 8, 8, 8. In this case, the smallest fraction will simply be the one with the smallest numerator. Looking at the numerators here, we have 3, 1, 7, 5. So the smallest numerator is 1, followed by 3, next 5, and lastly 7. Simply means the fraction 1/8 is the smallest, followed by 3/8, followed by 5/8, and lastly 7/8 in ascending order. We are done with A. We go now to B. For B, we have the fractions 1/3, 1/10, 1/5, and lastly 1/6. Looking at these fractions, you will see that they have a common numerator, 1, 1, 1, 1. The denominators are different. In this case, for us to get the smallest fraction will simply be the fraction with the biggest denominator. Looking at the denominators, here we have 3, 10, 5, 6. 10 is the biggest denominator. In this case, the smallest fraction will simply be 1/10. The next will be 1/6, followed by 1/5, and the biggest fraction will be the one with the smallest denominator, which is 1/3 in ascending order. We go now to question C. For C, we have the fractions 3/4, 5/8, 2/3, and lastly half. First thing, we need to start by finding the LCM of their denominators. You see that in this case, the numerators and the denominators are different. We have 4. Find the LCM of the denominators: 4, 8, 3, 2. The LCM will simply be, making use of our methods of prime factorization, we can easily obtain this LCM. If you cannot do it, make sure you check our lessons on LCMs. This will simply be equal to 24. Next thing, we need to express each of these fractions as equivalent fractions with a denominator of 24. If we take the first one, 3/4, we multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 6. 3 times 6 over 4 times 6. We know 3 times 6 will give us 18 all over. 4 times 6 will give us 24. So this is the equivalent fraction of the fraction 3/4. We go to the next one. We have 5 over 8. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 3. This will give us 5 times 3 is 15 over 8 times 3 is 24. We go to the next, which is 2/3. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 8. 2 times 8 gives us 16 over 3 times 8 gives us 24. We go now to the last one, which is a half. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 12. 1 times 12 remains 12 over 2 times 12 gives us 24. Now look at the fractions. You see that we have equivalent fractions with a common denominator, which is 24. Now we can easily arrange these equivalent fractions in ascending order. Since they all have a common denominator, which is 24, the smallest fraction will simply be the one with the smallest numerator. Look at the numerators. Here we have 18, 15, 16, 12. 12 on 24 is the smallest fraction. The next is 15 all over 24, followed by 16 over 24, and lastly 18 over 24. Then we conclude. Therefore, the smallest fraction will be a half. 12 over 24 is the equivalent fraction for a half. The next is 15 over 24. We know 15 over 24 is the equivalent fraction for 5 over 8. The next, 16 over 24, we know it is the equivalent fraction for 2/3. And lastly, 3/4 in ascending order. For question 2, it says arrange the following fractions in descending order. Descending, that means from the biggest to the smallest. For E, we have the fractions 5 over 11, 6 over 11, 2 over 11, 9 over 11. Looking at these fractions, you see that they have a common denominator, which is 11. In this case, the biggest fraction will simply be the one with the biggest numerator. Looking at their numerators, here we have 5, 6, 2, 9. Comparing them, 9 is the biggest. This will give us 9 over 11 as the biggest fraction. The next is 6 over 11. The next 5 over 11. And lastly 2 over 11 in descending order from the biggest to the smallest. In descending order. Going on to B. For B, we have the fractions 9 over 5, 9 over 10, 9 over 2, and lastly 9 over 13. We are to arrange them in descending order. That means from the biggest to the smallest. Looking at these fractions, you see that they have a common numerator, which is 999. In this case, for us to get the biggest fraction is simply the one with the smallest denominator. Looking at the denominators, here we have 5, 10, 2, 13. Comparing them, 2 is the smallest. Therefore, the biggest fraction will be 9/2, followed by 9/5. The next 9/10, and the smallest fraction will simply be 9/13 in descending order. We go now to question C. We have the fractions 3/5, 4/5, 3/4, and lastly 2/3. We have to arrange them in descending order. First thing, we need to start by finding the LCM of the denominators of these four fractions. We have 5. 5 repeats twice. 5, 4, 3. The LCM of 5, 4, and 3 is simply 60. This will equal to 60. Next step, we are to express each of these fractions as equivalent fractions with denominator 60. We take the first one, we have 3 feet. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator of this fraction by 12. Because we know if you take 5 times 12 gives us 60. 3 times 12 gives us 36 all over 60. We take the next, we have 4 all over 5. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 12 again. We know 5 times 12 gives us 60. 4 times 12 gives us 48 over 60. We take the next 3/4. We are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator of this fraction by 15. 4 times 15 gives us 60. That's why we are multiplying by 15. 3 times 15 gives us 45. We take now the last fraction, which is 2/3. In this case, we are going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 20. This will give us 2 times 20, which is 40 over 3 times 20, 60. Now you will see that we have equivalent fractions with a common denominator of 60. 60, 60, 60, 60. Now it is very easy for us to arrange these equivalent fractions in descending order from the biggest to the smallest. Comparing their numerators, we know 48 is the biggest, followed by 45, 40, and lastly 36. The biggest fraction will simply be 48 over 60. Next is 45 over 60. Next is 40 over 60. And lastly 36 over 60. Then we conclude. Therefore, 48 over 60 is equivalent fraction for the fraction 4 feet. 4 feet is the biggest. The next fraction will be, 45 over 60 is equivalent fraction for 3/4. The next fraction will be, 40 over 60 is equivalent fraction for 2/3. And lastly, the smallest fraction will be, 36 over 60 is a clean fraction for 3/5. And we are done in descending order. We are done with the correction of the exercise for application. If in case you have any worries, feel free to ask your questions at the comment section. If you like the video, share, and please do well to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching.